Hi, and welcome to Board Wrap-Up with Superintendent Dr. David Pennington. The Ponca City Schools are back in session. August board meeting was held just a couple of days after school got back. And before we get into the board meeting, I guess congratulations are due to your teachers and your administration. No problems to the start of the 2012 school year.
Well, I tell you, we had a great start, and we obviously had a lot of things going on this summer. The renovation at West Middle School, inside the building, people can drive by and see what we've done on the outside, but we had some extensive renovation inside, not only with building some classrooms where the offices used to be. We basically redid the gymnasium. We completely gutted the locker rooms and built those back up. We put new bleachers in the gym. And then, of course, at Trout, Woodlands, and Liberty, we had some other, we built new bathrooms for those facilities, replaced the flooring. So it was really busy summer. And the last couple of days before school start, we had construction crews, working late into the night, early morning, working on weekends to get those buildings in the kind of shape we needed to get them in so that we could start school. I've said this in other venues, but I specifically want to thank Rick Scott Construction. They had the really difficult job of replacing flooring and doing three major complete restroom renovations in three separate buildings. And they really went above and beyond the last couple of weeks to get those buildings ready. So it's not perfect. We're doing punch list stuff now. We'll come in and we'll fix some mistakes that were made. But I really appreciate the folks at Rick Scott and the work that they did.
And if people haven't been by West and seen that remarkable changeover of that school, that really looks like a different venue, and I know you're very proud of what they did at West.
Well, it really is a great renovation, and we have old buildings, and you can't get past that. But last year was the 50th anniversary of West, and so I was glad we were able to do this update, which really gives it a fresh new look. Classrooms are still classrooms, but I know that the staff is really pleased with the renovation, and really when you walk inside now, you just get a better feel. It just feels newer without being new. And the same thing at the elementary side. So we're really happy with that. Of course, we got a new football turf. I didn't think I'd be excited about having new football turf, but I am. It really looks great. I think of all the things I ever thought I'd do in my career, picking color for turf was not one of them. There's not a class in that, but we went with that blue infield and the end zones, and I think it really looks good. I think it's a great looking, the turf is a great looking facility. Obviously, that's one of the things we have to look at in the future. Our stadium is starting to show its age, and it's something we need to look at. What can we do to renovate that? Obviously, we're not going to move it any place. So, as long as we play football in Ponca City, the football field's going to be where it is. But that doesn't mean we can't dress up the field itself, that we can't do things to improve the environment for our fans and those kinds of things. So we're very happy.
The Board of Education met for their August meeting. Before the meeting, though, you actually had a very special ceremony that I know you wanted to talk about.
We had a real unique situation. We had the opportunity to present a high school diploma to a member of our community, Lois Roberts Turner. And Lois is 95 years old, and she just, we had a gentleman come in and see us who had been doing some, I'm not sure if he was doing meals, but he was involved with some senior citizens in our community, and he had met Miss Turner, and he came to us and said, I'm not really sure, but we have this lady that had to quit school in the 5th grade to help support her family. Got moved around with family members. This is, in the early 20s, 30s, in that time frame. Actually moved to Ponca City and lived most of her adult life here. And she's got her bucket list, and she's jumped out of an airplane. She's ridden in a helicopter. She's ridden in a gyroscope. She's got 2 things left. She wants to ride in a hot air balloon, and she'd like to have her high school diploma. And she had done some coursework and I believe the late 40s, early 50s, to try to get that done, and somehow it got lost in the process. In 2001, the Oklahoma legislature passed a law which said that an individual who is a veteran of either the Vietnam War, the Korean War, or World War II, and basically it was done for World War II veterans because we had so many of those veterans who left high school early to go serve our country in that conflict. And if they've been honorably discharged, we can grant them a high school diploma. And in the conversation, the gentleman mentioned that she had served in the military during World War II, and we were able to verify that. She had her discharge papers, so we submitted that to the State Department of Education, and they verified them, and we had the opportunity yesterday to grant her a high school diploma. And if anybody happened to watch one of the nightly news programs last night across the state, she's a very articulate lady, very bright lady, and very strongly believes in education. And that was her message to our young people, was stay in school, get your high school diploma. It's tough out there without one. And we all tell our students that, but it's always good to hear it from somebody with so much wisdom.
I mentioned the Ponca City News had a real good article in this past Sunday's paper about that as well. Good start to the meeting. You said there wasn't a whole lot, but testing again came up, and you had some testing information you wanted to pass on.
It's interesting. The pendulum in education changes like anything else, and for the last really 10, 11 years, we've been under we've been doing a lot of assessments of students, and we've shifted to what we call high stakes testing. As I told the board last night, not every test you take is a high stakes test. Typically, some of the characteristics of a high stake test is it's a test you take one time. There's a definite pass-fail mark, and there's a consequence for passing or failing. If you think about taking your driver's license test, that's a high stakes test. If you don't score a certain number, you don't get your driver's license, you can't drive. We've tested in schools for a long time. I mean, I can remember as a student, it seemed like every 3 or 4 years we would test. We never saw the results of those tests. The teachers got them, and usually our parents would come in for a meeting, and they would show them what those results were. Ever since 2002, with the passage of No Child Left Behind, we've taken those state tests, and we've had various consequences. Sometimes those consequences are just for the school. If not enough students demonstrated proficiency, you received a label, and that label was usually that your students aren't making enough progress. You're not you didn't make the cut mark. Either you're in need of improvement, or you're on the need of improvement list, or whatever. The last couple of years in Oklahoma, we've shifted some of that high stakes testing. We still have it for schools, but we've shifted some more of that to students. For example, with next year's third graders, if they don't demonstrate proficiency on the CRT test in reading, they will automatically be held back. In the past, whether or not a student went on to the next grade was a decision that was made by the school district based upon a lot of information, in consultation with parents, in making a determination what we believed was in the best long-term interest of the child. We now have a law, though, that says that the purpose of the law, if you read the law, it talks about social promotion. There are some out there that believe that we've been socially promoting kids. We ought to hold kids back, but we promote them anyway. It's not the case. The public in general has this belief that retention is this magic bullet, and if we just retain kids, they'll do better. We've been retaining kids in schools for as long as I've been alive, and probably further back. So we have a lot of research about retention. And what we know is that in most cases, retention is not effective. Students don't improve their academic performance when they're retained. Now, there are some cases when they do. If there's a maturity issue and they're not learning because they're just not mature enough, they can't sit still in class, they can't pay attention. For those students, retention works for them, but you're basically talking about kindergartners, first graders, second graders. Once you get past the second grade, the research on retention is just not very good. But we choose not to believe that, and so we have a law. We have a high stakes test. We also this last year just finished our first graduation class that's been affected by high stakes testing, which says that if students don't pass 4 out of 7 EOI tests, they don't get a high school diploma, even if they've met all the requirements. We had 2 students that passed all their courses last year, but they will not receive a high school diploma because they did not pass 4 out of 7 end of instruction test. So by an accident of birth, they're not getting if they were a year older, they didn't have a high school diploma. So we talked about that last night. And then we talked about the reasons for testing, which, those people that support testing, basically it boils down to a belief that that's the only way we know that what the state has says is important for students to learn is being taught, is by doing some type of a high stakes test. And there's some validity to that. Obviously, if you know you're going to have an assessment, you're more likely to teach what's on that assessment. And as we've moved to improve America's schools, this idea of high stakes test that we can rely on to tell us how our students are doing has got to be very popular. But here's what we know about high stakes test. We know that any time you have a high stakes test, you narrow the curriculum, in that we teachers have a tendency to focus what they teach, to spend their time on what's going to be on the test. Now, again, if all you're interested in is how students score in reading and math or whatever test you're going to assess, there's nothing wrong with that. But you just have to understand that when you do that you're going to spend less time in science, social studies, art, music, PE. You're going to have less time. And we've done that in this district. We have double sessions now of reading and math in most of our elementary schools because those are the 2 areas that students were assessed in, that the schools were given a grade into how we did. Now, again, one way to balance that out is just to test and everything, which is what we're starting to do now. But again, reading and math tests are the ones that most of the if there are any penalties, that's where they fall. We know that no matter what test you write, it can't test everything that goes on in the classroom. It can't test everything teachers cover. So that standardized test is a glimpse of what goes on in the classroom, but it's not everything that goes on in the classroom. So, how fair is that to evaluate a school or a teacher based upon a test? The American Psychological Association has come out and said that using a one-shot test to make grade placement levels about students or to draw conclusions about teaching is not an appropriate use of assessments. And so we talked about those things. And what the School Board Association has come out and said is they've said, look, we have to have a high-quality education system for economic progress in Oklahoma. But we need to create a system that gives multiple measures. That it's not just relying upon one test. A state test could be a part of that assessment, but that shouldn't be the only thing that goes in. The example I used last night is, when you go to the doctor and you go in for a physical, the doctor's you think about everything the doctor does. He's going to look in your ears, look down your throat, look at your eyes. He's going to test your reflexes, going to take blood, going to poke and prod in a lot of different places. And he'll take all that information, and from all that information, he'll make a decision about your health. He may recommend other tests. The doctor may prescribe medicine. The doctor may say, you need to eat less fat or you need to eat less calories. But your doctor will make a decision about your overall health based upon not only the examination he did, but the blood work that he does and other things. When you have a high-stakes testing system, you tend to make decisions about schools and school districts, about students and teachers based upon one test. And I think all of us don't really believe that's the best way things ought to be. So the School Board Association said we need to have multiple ways that we make decisions. The other thing the State School Board Association has said is we need to be focused on 21st century skills. We need to be focusing on collaboration, communication, critical thinking, innovation. And a standardized multiple choice test can't do that. So that's kind of what we discussed last night. Our board will make a decision in September, whether or not they want to sign on and lend their support to the School Board Association initiative. Obviously, once they gather all the information, they'll take that to the legislature and say that we have 100 school districts, we have 400 school districts, that the boards, which are locally elected people, have looked at this, and we believe we need to really look at our testing and assessment system and rethink what we're doing. There are some in our state who are adamantly opposed to making that change. I understand that. But I really think that if it's really about kids and it's what's best for kids, we can do better. We do have a new state testing system that's going to come out with the implementation of the Common Core, but it's still a standardized test. It's still a one shot. It's still I don't know. I wouldn't bet every penny I own or every property I have or all the money I have, but my guess is going to be that when you give that test, what you're going to find is that the students that are going to score lowest are going to be students in poverty, students with disabilities, and students that are English language learners. And again, I'm just real concerned about how we use these assessments to label kids, especially those that are the least fortunate in our school system. So that's what we talked about. We had a good discussion. I don't know how the board's going to vote. I'm sure that I'll get some feedback from them in the next couple of weeks, but we'll have that on the September board agenda, and we'll see where we go from there.
The testing to graduate, you mentioned 2 students. There was a school district over in the Tulsa area, though, I read, where they had a high number of students that did not qualify because they had graduated or they had passed enough classes, but they didn't pass this test. What happens to those students and the 2 students from Ponca City? What happens to those kids to now go back and try to get that degree?
Well, they have to pass the test. So, they would have to come back at a later date. We offered some things in the summer that they could do. They chose not to do that. When students finish high school, especially if you look at the students that have struggled across the state with this, there are some common characteristics. Significant number of these students are in alternative programs. So that means they have life situations that has made it difficult for them to have the same high school experience that the majority of students have. A lot of these students are parents. A lot of these students are on their own. They're seniors in high school, but they're living on their own. They're in their own apartment, or they're in their own living circumstance. Some of them are kids that just don't test well. They just don't test well for whatever reason. And so now there are some steps after, in addition to the state test, they can take a work keys test, which is an ACT developed product that tests skills that are applicable to the workplace. Then there was a portfolio that students could put together, but that was really an intensive thing we asked kids to do. And what most of our students want to do is they want to be done. They don't want to do that stuff in the summer. And we really were slow getting some guidance from the State Department about exactly when could we start giving the work keys test, when could they start putting a portfolio together. We're going to be better going forward, but again, I'm not a big fan of graduation tests. I just never have been. I think that our teachers do a good job of providing classroom instruction. I think that they're very capable of evaluating where students are academically and assigning them course grades. We had several students who were members of this past senior class who didn't get enough credits to graduate. but they didn't earn those credits. They'll go back and they'll go to summer school and they'll come back, or they may not finish. But those are students who weren't either through the individual testings that teachers do, everything you think of that makes up a classroom grade, they didn't perform at a level that made our teacher comfortable in giving them a passing grade. That's a different story to me than these EOI tests. And so, we'll see what happens. Obviously, those students who did not pass the test are at a disadvantage as they move forward in life. They don't have a high school diploma. It may not affect them today, but somewhere down the line, it could stand in their way. But the other part of it is, Phil, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've never had anybody call and want to verify somebody's high school diploma. You tell them you've graduated from high school, got a diploma. Most employers go on, and they go on.
Society just accepts that now.
Yeah.
Most people do.
Yeah.
I want to make one more point on our TV show before we go. You're the one responsible for the football field's color. Is that right?
No, I'm not. That was Brett Smith and Dr. Mike Simpson when he was here.
It's beautiful.
But I like it.
It's beautiful. I was going to give you props for that.
I'd like to take
right.
credit, but no, I mean they ran it by me, and I was a little concerned because you just don't ever know how those
Right.
colors. When you see a small model, you're not really sure how they're going to look. But it really came out nice. We're really happy with it.
It's spectacular is
Yeah.
what it is, absolutely. Thank you. Good
You bet.
start to the school year, and of course we'll look forward to talking to Dr. Pennington next month when we come to you in September with our board wrap-up show. Good evening.